Okay, we are live. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. It's Friday the 13th. I'm not sure what that means for Louisiana and Louisiana politics, but as every Friday morning, we have Rob Maness who's going to talk to us about what's going on in Louisiana legislature and other matters. So those people who are watching, please tell others, share this with others, and let's get it going. Good morning, Rob. How you doing?
Hey, good morning, Steve. I'm doing well, and I was a member of a bomber squadron called the Grim Reapers. So we used Friday the 13th as our day to say Happy Reaper Day. So to all those Grim Reapers out there from the 13th Bomb Squadron, Happy Reaper Day.
Okay, now that's Reaper, not Reefer.
Reaper.
Just wanted to make sure, I mean,
The Grim Reapers.
especially now. I mean, when you consider that Bonnier has just decided to be on the board of directors. You read about that. Just out of curiosity, did that surprise you?
Not really. Not really. He's Mr. Boehner's always been known as a center kind of Republican, maybe even slightly left of center based on some of the decisions he made as Speaker of the House. So not really. It doesn't surprise me at all.
Okay. Well, let's get going talking about some of the stuff going on in Louisiana. Where do you want to start first?
Well, let's start with the fiscal cliff numbers came out yesterday or the day before yesterday, and it looks
yesterday.
We are in a much better situation than we expected to be, which was being predicted. So I don't think it was a real surprise to anybody. It does take away a little bit of the Baton Rouge media's messaging that they tend to do about needing to raise taxes and those kind of things. But I was impressed that Taylor Barra, the Speaker of the House and the state legislature, came out very quickly and said, well, we should be able to get a budget out of the House that is strictly based on cuts to the general fund with this number, and we'll see what they can do. But the problem has been in Louisiana is the impending doom approach to getting our budget under control when it comes to political messaging. Really on both sides. I've seen it on both sides since I came home from the Air Force into Louisiana and started getting active in Louisiana politics. So if we can somehow get beyond the doomsday approach to the political messaging and come together to the table and take a look at our budget at the state level and find ways that we can cut without hurting folks that don't need to be hurt, that we can cut extra services that we don't necessarily need. They're just maybe there are some that are just they're nice to have things, because you can't tell me that in a $30 billion budget that everything is absolutely a necessity. We all know better than that. It doesn't make common sense, and we'll see what they can do.
Okay, real quick, see that Connie Bernard and Beth Croslow Billings are telling you hello, and so
good morning.
Good morning. Yes, and if you have any questions or any comments, please go ahead and post them here on Facebook, whether they're on your page or your Facebook pages or Twitter or whatever. Same thing in terms of people who follow in Louisiana politics, Facebook group. This is also being posted on Bayou Buzz. Again, if you have any questions, go ahead and post your questions. We'll get to them. And likewise, if you have anything that you just want to comment about, go ahead. Love to hear from you, and we'll read them. So, in terms of the budget, yesterday we had we had a guest on this program along with Jim Brown, and basically the executive director Jan Mola from the Louisiana Budget Project, and no question, I mean, very, very left of center, progressive,
Yes.
liberal, however you want to describe it. The points he made were, and I'll try to summarize. Number one is that Okay, fine. If you want to cut, let us know exactly what it is that you're going to cut. Don't just say, well, we're going to redirect, we're going to direct the department heads to cut 20%, 10%, whatever. Tell us what it is that you're going to do. Secondly, that when you look at it, the budget itself does not account for inflation or any cost increases. That basically all it does is says, we need $650 million to provide the same services that were provided this year, 2018, not 2019 going forward. So the rise in prices, for everything, cost of living, etc., is not accounted for. So now you're talking about a cut. So that was his general position. Therefore, if you want to have the same level of services, the argument is that you're looking at closer to $1 billion obligation. Lastly, that 600 to $700 million is nothing, or $600 million in terms of the fiscal cliff by itself is not anything to sneeze at.
No.
We were going nuts under Governor Foster and Blanco when we're looking at 50 million, 100 million, 400 million under Governor Foster. Now this is the 10th year of some budget cuts. So I just want to put that in, put all this in that perspective. Go ahead.
Had that person been on the show with us, my question to them would be, when's the last time, or what was specifically the last cut that anybody on the other side of the aisle proposed to this budget?
Oh, well,
because you're fooling people if you try to tell them you can't cut anything in this budget. And the red herring, tell us what the cut leaves the legislature open to not being willing to come to the table and negotiate with the agency heads and listen to them and micromanagement, quite frankly. So the trick is that type of rhetoric needs to end. The type of rhetoric that comes from the others, from my side, quite frankly, that says we got to cut everything, can end also. But in order to not put out a piece of legislation that says, okay, every agency is going to take a 1% cut, for instance, as an example, then both sides have to come to the table in good faith and look at their budgets and see where the waste is and see what may not be a necessary service. And you never hear that from the other side. What are the unnecessary expenditures in your agency? As a matter of fact, the legislators have an extremely difficult time in this state getting the adequate information to do a line item budget cutting exercise with any of these agencies, because our laws are not strong enough to force them to come in with the entire picture. That's why the legislature tried to pass the concept of the Louisiana checkbook during the last special session. And I'm one of the people that has brought that idea up to legislators, so I'm glad that they took it up because I've seen what it's Louisiana done for Ohio during the last special session. Treasury Secretary in Ohio, Mr. Josh Mandel, put that process in place in Ohio, and it's been very effective in establishing and reestablishing trust between government and its expenditures and the people of the state, and all the way down to the municipal level. So I understand. I hear what the person is saying from the Louisiana Budget Project. I read their stuff. They are much more than slightly left-leaning. But you know what? There is room to talk around those issues because everybody's got to come in to the debate and the discussion about something like the budget in good faith. And if we continue to just fire rhetorical artillery rounds at each other, then we're going to continue in this stalemate, which, as you mentioned, Steve, has gone on for years and years and years and years, way beyond Governor Jindal in the past. And it's something that we've got to get control of. But the real issue is budget reform and how we do the budget in the state of Louisiana, and establishing a budget system, and along with that, a revenue system that will that can use the revenues that we're capable of generating today for adequate budgeting and spending in the state of Louisiana. And for several years now, we've been going way beyond our capability to raise revenue and spending on this budget, which is why we have the fiscal cliff every single year. And I think we're up to 6 special sessions in Governor Edwards' term now, maybe 5. I've lost count. There's likely to be another one because I see the train coming down the tracks in this regular session right now. It looks like we're going to end up in a similar situation, more than likely, if they're going to come out with a budget that just cuts the general fund out of the House. We'll be in a similar situation as we were last year in the regular session and have to go to a special session in July.
So let me just say what my position is, and certainly ask you to comment. Basically, I feel that both the right and the left will spend money on programs that they believe are necessary to push their own agenda. I don't buy that only one side spends money and the other side does not. I think that, for example, a real good example, I think, is dealing with TOPS. And I know you and I talked about this. I know that a lot of people are saying, no, don't touch TOPS. Okay, I mean, my son, my daughter, my kid next door, etc. But you can cut everything else. You can cut Medicaid. You can cut other programs that service the poor. On the other hand, we have a lot of people on the left, who are saying, no, we need to take care. That's the obligation that we have to society. And so that's what I'm saying. Even on the federal level, don't cut military on one side. On the other side, obviously don't cut Medicare. Hey, let's give tax breaks to the ultra rich versus, and I'm not saying that either side is wrong or right. I'm just saying that it exists, and I think that we need to recognize that because, both sides want to spend money on their own pet projects.
Sure. Let's unpack that a little bit.
Sure.
I don't disagree with you, but I use different terms. Steve, you use the term the left and the right. The left and the squish Republicans is what those of us that are really truly fiscally conservative use that term. We'll call them squish Republicans. They say they're in the middle, but they're really center left. They're big government Republicans. And we see it at the federal level. We definitely see it at the state level. Here in Louisiana, our open primary system has enabled folks that would ordinarily be Democrats to come into the Republican Party and win. And that continues that type of governance and ideological bent. So we're slightly center, slightly center left. Quite frankly, from a fiscal perspective, and you see the same thing at the federal level with the squish Republicans or moderate Republicans. The demeaning is just a name for those folks that are center left Republicans. I mean, that's really, you have to acknowledge that we have large numbers of those, and I think that's a lot of the retirements that you're seeing right now at the federal level are center left. Center Republicans that just don't think they can work with the president. Now, let's go back to the state level and let's talk about TOPS for a second. I was surprised over the last few weeks. There's been some good media coverage on TOPS and how it works and how it's funded and those kind of things. And There are folks that are citizens, that are active people in the state of Louisiana from a grassroots perspective in politics that did not realize that TOPS was funded by revenue. They thought it was funded by an endowment from Mr. Taylor, who it's named after.
Sure.
Yeah, but it's all funded by your tax dollars today. And to continue a program like that with very few controls on it, I think is not a good thing to do. As you go through the execution of any program, whether it be in business or in government, and you see how it's performing and you see how the individuals that it's intended to impact are performing, you've got to be willing to make adjustments and changes to that program to make it as efficient as you possibly can, especially in government where you're a steward of tax dollars and you don't really generate revenue to replace it like you do in business. That's the issue there. So to be able to make changes to TOPS that make sense needs to be done. And the Republicans that are saying you can't change TOPS, they know they're wrong. They know that they should do better and they can do better. They're just afraid of their constituents, and what they need to do is get out there and talk to their constituents and explain to them what's going on, because a lot of their constituents don't even think the government funds it.
Well,
in the state.
Go on.
But let me go on. On the other side, you mentioned the medical care. Is a society obligated to spend a third of its revenue resources on medical care? A society, I believe that a society is obligated to help those that are necessary, to help them become in a situation where they're no longer in need. Especially a society like ours. But I don't believe that our society is obligated to spend a third of our revenue and a third of our state's budget on supposedly helping all those in need, because I don't believe that all of that money goes to the poor. I believe it mostly goes to providers and bureaucrats and those kinds of things. And I want to see that Louisiana checkbook passed so I can really dive down into this stuff, because believe me, I've done research trying to find out what's going on in a specific budget, and it's really difficult to do in the state.
Okay, so we have couple comments. And let me just say this, that in terms of the TOPS thing, I don't think it's just the squishy or the rhinos on the Republican side.
I didn't say rhinos.
No, okay, well, the squishies then. I've heard it from people who I definitely would consider to be, not squishy, and I find that the closer they are to their kids being in college at this point in time, the greater resistance there is. Now, I'm just telling you, I think that, everybody has their pet projects. Everybody wants more for themselves. That's just the way it is. And I just think it's on both sides. And we can justify all spending. I could justify spending for the poor easily, uneducated easily. I could say it would help out for our, we would have less crime. And certainly you're in favor of having less crime. So that's, that's in the many decades of observing government, society, and politics, that's the number one conclusion, that we're all liberals when it comes to, and spendthrifts when it comes to issues that are important to us.
I don't necessarily think they're all spendthrifts, but there's certainly, once a government program is established, whether it's controlled by liberals or conservatives, what is it has immortality. Now, let me just clarify something, though. You said a couple of times that you can justify all spending and projects and everything. But I just want to make a note about national defense at the federal level. I see that as different because I think it's wrong for us to morally equivocate that national defense is equivalent to the entitlement spending that's going on, because national defense is specifically as the number one priority of the federal government for this compact that we're in as states. And I believe that is a different thing. It's not really a pet project from my perspective, and I'm considered very far right sometimes by some people. So there are differences in some monies and funding projects and those kind of things, and someone like me is going to fight much more aggressively to make sure our national defense is funded, because we believe that set of funds is different and should be treated differently as any other funding level and those kind of things. Now, it doesn't specifically say that at the state level, but some people will try to put public safety in as that, the National Guard is part of that, and those kind of things. So that's just a difference in the way I think.
Oh, sure.
I don't see that as a pet project. I see that as a requirement, an absolute requirement that has to be funded.
I agree with you. Okay, I mean, I definitely agree with you in terms of defense. However, I think you're making a point. Okay, and that is that that is something that obviously you're quite familiar with in terms of your decades of experience in our in protecting our country,
Sure.
which we all thank you for that. And so there are some people right now, for example, who are saying, well, wait a minute, we don't need to go into Syria. We don't need to spend that kind of money. We don't need to run the risk. And, we need to put that money into infrastructure. So
I'm one of those some people, but that money is not going to be saved to put into infrastructure. At least from the defense budget, that money is going to be saved inside the defense budget if we don't go into Syria. I'm a person that the national defense is not a pet project for me. It's a requirement of the federal government. And let me just explain that a little bit. And my comment to you, I don't believe the president should be going into a sovereign nation with American military combat forces and combat power to fight a war if the Congress hasn't approved it. The Congress is the closest representatives to the people of this country. And many of us don't want our defense spending spent on something that's nefarious, that's not a vital national interest. Syria is contained right now. It is not in the vital national interest of the United States of America to go to all-out war with Syria. Now, the president, under the War Powers Act that was passed back in the 70s, which I disagree with and think is unconstitutional, has the authority to go in on his own and just notify Congress and then withdraw troops within 90 days. Unfortunately, our Congress passed that darn law, and he can do that. But I don't agree with him because, and here's why, no one has shown me, and I have decades of experience with chemical weapons, decades. I'm probably one of the only people you've ever talked to that's been exposed to a chemical warfare agent directly and worked with them directly in a real life situation. And no one has shown me that a bona fide war combat capability of a formal chemical agent was used either in this attack or the one where the president responded with cruise missiles. And I was not in agreement with him to do that, but he made his decision and we had to go on. So you're right. But it's not a pet. It can't be a pet project for us because the Defense Department is vast. And we did an audit this year, which is a platform plank that I have run on for U.S. Senate. And I can't wait to read the report of the Department of Defense. An audit hasn't been done in years. I think in more than 50 years, if at all, of the current modern Defense Department. And I want to see that being run as efficiently as humanly possible, because those dollars, you're right, those dollars can be used for other things, but the main thing it needs to be used for now, if we save dollars, is to spend down our national debt, which is now over $22 trillion. Thanks to Republicans, which makes your point. The Republicans will do that too. I believe that we need to get back to regular order, which would carve the defense budget out into one of its own appropriations bills and budget parts of the budget under the 12 bills that are required to be put forth through regular order and get away from this continuing resolution and omnibus situation that we have been in for nearly 20 years now. Because it's bad for the armed forces, as Secretary Maness has said. And I can tell you, as somebody who's been a commander and had to deal with the shenanigans going on with politicians during the budget process and get my people to war and get them back safely and take care of their families every single day, that is a major problem. So if we carve that out and deal with defense on its own, then we can get away from all this political shenanigans that go on both sides of the aisle and have a real debate about the rest of the budget and what we should be doing. And we should be doing the same thing at the state level. Okay,
so let me just, I'm going to read these. I would make this statement, though, in terms of Syria, that if we get embroiled in that means, more of our assets to have to deal with a war that may not ever end. You just never know what does happen. And so that's
let me just stop you right there for a second, though, Steve. Just a correction: we are embroiled in that. Barack Obama put 500 troops on the ground there under his administration towards the end. The current president continued it above the opposition of many of us that are trained professional warfighters, and he continues to do that. Now, he's done some good things under the authorization to defeat ISIS and destroy them on the ground and those kind of things there. But that's a different story than going into the sovereign nation of Syria. However, we are embroiled there already, unfortunately, and I would like to see us extricate ourselves from that entanglement before we get further down this road. And what I'm concerned about is that it's going to go further down this road. And I speak as the dad of a son that's in that area right now. So,
wow. Okay, so that's a big wow, by the way. So Connie Bernard has made some comments here, and I want to circle back to those. Medicare recipients need to pay a copay at the ER urgent care, possibly not for primary care visits. That's something that you and I have talked about. You believe in the copay, and I think that makes some sense. $5, $10. That's not a whole lot. So let's see. Also, we need to eliminate the unfilled positions in every department of state government. We're pretty much doing that, as I appreciate it. Beth Croslow Billings, I have an issue with yanking the carpet from under tops. Students already enrolled in school, and I agree, Beth.
Yeah.
Being merit-based, the students who have chosen to remain in Louisiana because of TOPS need to know they are safe. Otherwise, they should go where the best deal is. And that's a counter argument. No question about it. And again, I'm not saying that there's not a doggone good argument for preserving TOPS. There is. There's a great argument for trying to reform it because we have to. There is just, in my opinion, arguments on all sides of all issues, and you can make, whether people agree with you or not, you can argue for increased spending for whatever political side that you're on.
I'll go back to, let me clarify. I didn't say anything about yanking the rug out from under anybody in TOPS. What I'm talking about is let's do the common sense adjustments that need to be made under the reality of the program. Here's one of my questions is how many kids that have taken TOPS dollars have graduated with a 2-year degree? And if they haven't graduated with at least a 2-year degree and they took the money, then we need to look at how do we recoup those costs? Because, at the federal level, when something, let's take, for instance, in the military programs, if you are provided a college education, say you get a scholarship to ROTC, and once you go beyond the 2 years in college point, and you're on a 4-year scholarship, you're committed. Once you commit, if you withdraw or fail, then you owe those dollars back to the federal government that puts you there in the first place. So you have to pay that tuition back. It's a common sense approach to making sure you have adequate standards and controls on those standards, because it's just the way a human program works. How many times have we adjusted tops to make sure that we're covering for those kinds of inefficiencies and inadequacies? I would argue that we haven't done that. There was a bill that I believe that was trying to do that, and it didn't get out of committee. I have to go back and do the research, find out the number for you if somebody needs it. But I believe I saw a bill or someone in the media, a representative in the media, talking about this approach, and nobody wants to do that. Well, why don't we build that into the program and say from graduates of 2019 on, these are the rules. What most people care about is tell me the rules up front. Don't jerk me around after you get me in a program. And it's called grandfathering. We do that all the time in the military. We do it in all kinds of programs at federal, state, and local government programs that give benefits to folks. So let's take a real honest look at it and see if there is a place that we need to make some adjustment. And I would argue, based on what I've seen, that there are some places that we need to make an adjustment. And it is a merit-based program. When the folks sign up for it, your parents are planning on that, and they're there to make sure you get good grades. You should be making sure you're getting good grades. But one of the incentives to get good grades and complete the program can be built right into the program, and it's just you have to pay back if you withdraw from the program after a certain point. There's nothing wrong with that, and that shouldn't be used to beat politicians about the head and shoulders if they have that idea. It's a great idea.
One of the ideas I have, and I there may be some support for this and probably a lot of opposition. I'll definitely admit, and that is, one of the things the state absolutely needs is more people who are taking the science, the technology, the math, the STEM curricula. Mm-hmm. And we need that badly. Yet we're funding people for liberal arts. Doesn't mean, look, I know doctors who graduated with English degrees from college and went on to healthcare and now or medical doctors. So I understand. I've got a liberal arts degree. Went on to law, and also have done obviously media. So but that's something we need. We need more people in technology, in medicine, healthcare, math, science, and maybe we should have a greater weight, for those people who do go into those areas because of our need.
That's not a bad idea to look at. We also need people not in the arts and not in the college graduate STEM level, but that actually can get technology degrees, say at the 2-year level, and then get out of college there and go to work in the STEM environment, because a lot of that type of work can be completed at a 2-year technical college degree level, to where you have the right education, and then you can go get the experience to do that. So we might be able to save money there if we focus in that area at the 2-year level too, and get more of our kids into jobs here in Louisiana, because I will tell you that the economic development folks will tell you every day that we're short of workers in those areas. And we should be, if we're going to have a government program, it should be oriented towards what the needs of society are, in addition to just providing somebody with an education. There is a need in society to do that, but you can target it even better in a more precise way to address some of the urgent needs and continuing needs that we have, and STEM is one of those areas.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have a few more minutes. I think we're going over the half hour that we tried to focus on, but what other major issue, we talked about the budget, what other major issues do you think that you want to bring up?
Well, real quickly, gun politics continues to be an issue here in the state of Louisiana. Another Republican, this time Senator Gary Smith, abstained instead of voting yes for a gun control bill that got out of a Senate committee. It will be voted on Monday, I believe, in the full Senate. These Republicans will have radio ads in their districts run to let their constituents know that they are not supporting the Second Amendment and that they are advocating for or letting bills pass that are not good policy. And that Senate Bill 491 is once again not good policy. You won't find common sense gun owners saying this is terrible and we got to fight against every single one of these bills if they're good policy and they can be looked at in a common sense way. So that's gun politics there. You can expect if you're a legislator and you vote or don't vote and allow one of these crazy bills restricting our civil rights to keep and bear arms, that we in the Louisiana Defense Coalition, my PAC, Gator PAC, and all the other citizen level gun owning organizations and supporters of the Second Amendment will talk to your constituents for you and let them know what you're doing. And we're going to ask that they let you know that you should vote no on gun control from here on out in this legislative session. The other thing that's come up this week is my congressman, Steve Scalise, and your congressman, I believe, is being talked about for Speaker of the House. I'm not surprised there. I'm also not surprised that he said he wouldn't run against Kevin McCarthy. But this is just the beginning of that issue. Let's wait and see what happens with the congressional midterms and that kind of thing. But I think Mr. Scalise is in a very strong position to possibly be Speaker of the House, or at least Majority Leader if the Republicans keep the majority in the House after the midterms. And it's going to be good for Louisiana. That type of position is always good for Louisiana when you have a legislator that achieves that. And I think that's a good thing.
Well, we've been close before. Certainly Hale Boggs and of course Bob Livingston. But we have never, we've never hit the cigar. In terms
That's true. But we have a really good possibility, if not this time, then the next time around, if Mr. Scalise is able to continue to serve.
Sure. Do you think he's healthy enough? I mean, obviously you don't know his medical, but that would be, I think, maybe, it's a double-edged sword, okay? I think he'll get the sympathy vote, okay? On the other hand, it's a very difficult, taxing job, and whether or not he is healthy enough to be able to do the grind.
Well, he's been able to fulfill his majority whip duties since coming back to work. I saw him about 6 months ago. I met with him, and he was still getting some assistance with a walker a little bit, but he was. But he told me he was feeling really well, and the physical therapy was going well. So I don't think they would make the decision as a family to go forward with something like that if they didn't think he could do it and still be a dad and everything else that goes along with being an elected representative and serving your country. So we'll see, and it'll be good for Louisiana regardless of the outcome if he gets one of those two positions. But certainly if he becomes Speaker of the House. It'll definitely be good for our state.
Okay, we have time for one more issue, so go ahead and pick it.
Well, let's see here. How about medical marijuana expansion?
Okay.
The Louisiana House just voted for expanding on medical marijuana. The original medical marijuana bill was restricted to very few, very narrowly defined diseases and conditions and those kind of things. And I think the biggest part about this expansion is that it's going to cover post-traumatic stress. And it doesn't just apply to veterans because a lot of people have post-traumatic stress. But I know, and look, I don't use marijuana or anything, but I've talked to a lot of veterans, especially on the young side, that have post-traumatic stress, that have tried to get off of the cocktail of pills that are prescribed to them through the VA and various other sources. And they've gone to using medical marijuana, and they say that it's helped them. So, if it's safe enough, that safe enough for any other thing, I think it's a good thing that it's expanded to that, and do support that. I supported the original bill to clean up our law and make sure nobody was going to get in trouble for having a prescription or using or filling a prescription for medical marijuana. And I think we fixed that part, and now we're expanding it out to a few more things that it'll be good for our state and good for the folks that need it.
So, I mean, are we cultivating the environment though for legalization, especially like with people like Bonnier, who, to me, I was very surprised. Man, I know he smoked cigarettes, but to be on that board. And when you look at what's going on in Washington, D.C., Washington State, California, Nevada, I mean,
I think what you're going to see now that we've gone to more of where we should be, a state-oriented approach to this type of thing, just like we did eventually with alcohol. When I was a teenager, I still lived in what was called at the end of my teenage years. My dad retired from the military, and we lived in a dry county, where there was no alcohol allowed. I think you're going to see more and more of that type of approach come, just like we've seen in Colorado and Washington, and I believe Oregon and Nevada have legalized recreational use of marijuana today. I think you're going to see that, and you know what? I believe it's inevitable that that will grow. There are a lot of incentives for that to grow. Decreased need for policing resources in the entire effort against that specific drug. If that drug is taken off of the schedule, I believe it's a Schedule 1 drug right now, then you'll see that society will shift towards more of a recreational use. But I think you're going to continue to see, like states like ours, like me, for instance. I've been asked about it time and time again because I supported medical marijuana, but I'm not there. I'm not there on the recreational side. I've seen what it did to my folks when I was in the Air Force. I've seen what it's done to family members that it's been a gateway drug. Now, that may change if it's legalized and it no longer is a gateway drug to worse things that are killing our kids, like opioids and heroin, synthetic heroin and those kind of things, which are killing our children in large numbers. And this doesn't get enough media play at any level, in my opinion. We have a huge opioid problem, and as we're looking at things and policies like marijuana becoming a commonly used recreational drug, we've got to make sure that drugs like these opioids and the synthetic heroin that's coming into towns across the border in Canada, and the opioids coming from Mexico, and fentanyl coming from China that are killing us. I mean, literally 115 Americans a day, about 70% of them are underage children, are dying in this crisis. We've got to make sure that we have solid policies that don't invite any more of that, because it's such a dangerous situation once you get beyond marijuana use.
Yep, it definitely is dangerous. Let's see, we have a comment here. Bear with me. Sarah Daggers says it should be decriminalized. It's considered a gateway drug because it's illegal. Connie Bernard, have you seen the research that suggests that it can help with the opioid crisis? I got to tell you,
Yeah.
my gut feeling, based upon my own experiences growing up, I shudder, really shudder, with the thought that we would be legalizing marijuana for commercial purposes, recreational purposes. We have states like Colorado who do have experience with this. So we will have at least numbers to look at. We will have, to be able to look to see how does this impact our educational services, K to 12, because, that's impacted,
Mm-hmm.
university, um, you know, with public safety, things of that nature.
Yeah.
I believe that it would make people very lethargic, but we'll see whether or not the production in these states have actually decreased over time. So,
Yeah.
we're 20 years ago, think about it. 20 years ago, there was an incredible groundswell against gambling.
Yeah.
In 2007, we had a candidate for governor who couldn't get anywhere because he had a gambling operation, video poker. Now we're looking at expanding gambling.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
So,
One of the things that's really surprised me on the medical or on the marijuana issue, not the medical one, but the
sure.
broader issue of recreational use is, look, I was a lifelong cigarette smoker until my late 30s, and started at a very young age because I grew up in a family that,
Right.
my father, my examples, and grandfather, they all used tobacco, and those kind of things. So, what I don't understand is how people that would that look at you with the utter disdain and hatred if you lit a cigarette up in a public place now inside a building, will advocate for putting the smoke of a marijuana cigarette into your lungs. That's the piece that when I look at it, I go, well, gosh, I get it if that's what you want to do, but I'm not sure what the impact is on your lungs, your pulmonary system, your circulatory system, your heart, and those kind of things. And it's puzzling to me that you can have individuals, and most individuals are, many individuals, I won't say most, but many individuals that I know are on the pro-recreational side and anti-cigarette smoking side. So it's interesting to see. I think it's inevitable, just like the lifting of prohibition of alcohol. It was a wrong constitutional amendment to make, and that prohibition eventually was lifted. I think this prohibition will eventually be lifted just because of the folks that are of age in society have vastly differing views than those that have been in control up to this point.
And actually, perfect segue. You did mention cigarettes, and there is legislation to to stop people from smoking in public places.
Yeah,
Uh,
even outside.
yeah. So David Cray says, "I don't want any kind of smoke around me." I agree. I agree with David. I mean,
Yeah.
if I go to work, I don't want it.
Yeah.
If I go into a restaurant, if I go into maybe a casino, which I don't go into, I will exempt that. But I just think, there's no reason that I should have my clothes smelling like a cigarette butt.
Yeah, being a former cigarette smoker, it's very difficult for me to go into a place that allows smoking inside and then come out of it feeling very good, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Now, I won't say that I won't smoke a cigar occasionally. I have and do, but to have to go into those establishments and then you come out and your clothes are just reeking and you got to go get them dry cleaned and washed and everything. I think it has a bigger impact on me as an ex-smoker than it does on somebody that's never even smoked.
Right, and I'm an ex-smoker too, so I definitely understand what you're saying. David Grace also says vaping should be illegal in public places too. Your thoughts there?
Well, it doesn't emit anything but a water vapor, from what I understand. 6 1, half dozen the other. I'm a more of a liberty-minded person. If it's not harming anybody else, I don't believe that anything should be outlawed. You can't say that about cigarette smoke, and you won't be able to say that about marijuana cigarette smoke either. If in fact it does become uncontrolled in large areas of the country or the entire country at some point.
Okay, I think we've come to the end of our program once again on Friday morning. We're doing this every Friday morning, 8 a.m. So set your watches, your computers, your cell phones, etc. For that time, so you can join us and we can read your comments. That's really what we're trying to do here, is to create a community where we can have a discussion about the issues in the legislature and those things that emanate, from the legislature to more of the national government. Please go ahead and share the video while you're at the computer. Go and share. Today we will go ahead and we will post some of this content up on BayouBuzz.com, my website, BayouBuzz.com. We will post the content along with some of the content with transcription and related video. So it's been fun again. Time moves very quickly. Colonel Maness, I thank you so much. And if you don't mind, hold on so we can chat a few seconds. So guys, those watching, please share. Any last thoughts?
Thank you, Steve, again for having me on. It's great to spend some time on Friday mornings with Louisianans and Americans and with you talking about these issues. And folks can find me at Rob Maness on Twitter and at COL Rob Maness on my large fan page. And you can find me at robmaness.com still.
Okay, great. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you, guys. Let me hit those buttons. Say goodbye.